When we made our McDonald's Spicy Chicken McNuggets, you were praise hands emoji. Then we ran out, and you were streaming tears emoji. Now they're back, so you can be grinning face with sweat emoji. Order ahead on the McDonald's app.
Break out the party hat emoji, because a 6-piece Spicy Chicken McNuggets is just $2.50. And if that's not enough, try a Spicy McCrispy or a Spicy Deluxe McCrispy. And if that's not enough, there's always the sauce. Price and participation may vary.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Dream Power Radio. This is a place where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love and rediscover the truth of who you really are. Have you ever watched world-class athletes and wonder how they do it? What makes it possible for a marathon runner to make it up that hill 22 miles into the race? Or a cyclist to move ahead of the pack and sprint after a grueling 200-mile race? Or a long-distance swimmer battling both fatigue and powerful ocean currents? Do they have something in them that's superhuman, something most of us can never realize? Or is something else at play, something that any of us can access? We're going to go into the mind of one such performer today, world-class cyclist Anne-Marie Miller. Anne-Marie has won the UCII World Masters Championship twice and is an 11-time U.S. National Masters champion. She's going to tell us what she does to give herself an edge over her competitors. And why is this important to you? Well, the techniques that make her a world champion and successful training and performance coach can make you a superstar in your field as well and give you a leg up on achieving the success you want. Welcome to Dream Power Radio, Anne-Marie.
Hi, Deb. How are you today?
Oh, wonderful. Well, Anne-Marie, when I was a little girl, I would race around the block with my friends on my bike, trying to see who could race the fastest. My racing days didn't last very long because most of the kids were older and had better bikes, and I didn't usually win, so I lost interest. Did you have racing in mind the first time you got on a bicycle as a kid?
Not really. I think as a kid, I more or less used it as kind of a little escape to just ride around our farm on the driveways and lanes and just kind of keep moving. I was always someone who was always in motion in one way or another. And the bike was a lot of fun to be able to get and roll and you could go fast. So it gave you a feeling of freedom and a sense of being able to kind of chart your own course.
So what made you decide to go into competitive racing?
Well, I took a very roundabout way to get into competitive racing, to be honest with you. I had been more or less a runner for most of my life, although I had been on my sorority bike team in college at a relay race that was held at Ball State University called Sigma Switch. But I always had a bike and I would use it mostly for commuting and riding around and, getting from one place to another. And I was doing a lot of running races at that time. And I was working in a corporate fitness center. And one of my colleagues said, "Oh, well, you run and you ride a bike, you ought to do duathlons." And I really didn't know what a duathlon was. It's a bike, it's a race event that consists of a run leg, a bike leg, and then another run leg. So I thought, well, hey, I do those things. Great, let me try it. And I entered my first duathlon in New York City and actually ended up second place out of all the women. So I thought, hey, this could be fun. And I did a lot of duathlons because I enjoyed both running and cycling. And then I started getting more and more interested in cycling. And I just felt like, well, I'm doing this, but I don't really know that much about it. I just want to be a better cyclist. So first I joined New York Cycle Club because they had a great training program. It was a 12-week program where they helped riders build endurance to go from riding 40 miles to completing a century ride, which is 100 miles. And they also taught good group riding skills and bike handling skills. And I got very involved in that and then was a ride leader for that group for 3 years. And I never really thought much about racing bikes because it always looked a little intimidating to have 60 people packed into a roadway and going at high speeds. But I kind of overheard some friends of mine mention that their bike handling skills really improved when they started racing. So I thought, well, I've taken the recreational cycling about as far as I can go. I'm having a great time, but I would like to try and improve my skills. So I had no illusions about racing. I just started racing in order to be a better rider because I enjoyed cycling and I just wanted to get the most out of it. So I rather naively entered a bike race and actually ended up winning it and did not even realize I had won my division in that race. The first really open USA cycling race I ever entered. And from then on, I was really hooked and really sought to, improve my racing skills and become more fit and just learn more about it. So I got very involved and eventually progressed to the point where now I'm a USA Cycling Level 2 licensed coach. And I also have my bike fitter certification from Specialized Bicycle Components. And besides being involved in the fitness industry, I'm doing a lot of cycle coaching and multi-sport coaching.
But why long distance cycling? I mean, it's very grueling and you have to face all kinds of obstacles when you're doing it.
Well, that's true. And even as we went through, the first time I trained to do a century ride and each ride got progressively longer, at first it seems kind of intimidating. And you think, well, how could I ever ride more than 40 miles? But you realize it's just one pedal stroke at a time. And the main thing is prepare yourself. If you build up gradually and take the time to build the endurance and also take the time to understand how you're going to have to fuel your body for these longer events and eat smart, both before the race and also during the race and after, then, you can have fun. It can be a really successful experience. If you're unprepared or if you don't plan ahead or you kind of become forgetful, one of the worst things you can do is actually bonk during a race, which it's similar to a marathon runner hitting the wall. When you simply run out of your glucose and glycogen stores and there's nothing in the tank. And you cannot go very far when you have no fuel.
Yeah. So Pat, tell me, how do you prepare to race a long race like that?
Well, a long race like that, hopefully I've done the training ahead of time. It takes more than a week, more than a couple of weeks. You want to give yourself enough window of time to really build the endurance so you can comfortably handle long distance rides. And long distance could be anything from something like what we call a metric century, 62.1 miles, which is a popular distance, or all the way up to a century, 100 miles. Or there are even now longer races, sort of gravel races that often are 200 miles long or more. And for those, again, give yourself enough window of time to adequately prepare. So you build week by week in the volume of training you're doing. And then as you approach the event, you don't want to be riding 100 miles the day before you do a century ride. So you have to give yourself enough time to actually taper before the race. But it's similar to a marathon tapering, where once you've built up to a point where you can run 20 miles, then you actually start tapering and cutting your mileage for the last 2 or 3 weeks so that you still have the endurance base, but you're fresh and your muscles, you'll have more of a chance to actually store muscle glycogen in your muscles if you're not overusing your muscles on a daily basis and depleting them daily. So you want to build up those glycogen stores. You want to give yourself time to taper, and not just for nutritional reasons or for musculoskeletal reasons, but also kind of as a mental trick. Because if you start tapering, you're training less and you've been used to training at a higher volume. So mentally, it really makes you want to get out there and do the long event instead of dreading it. You feel like, in fact, a lot of people suffer kind of guilt when they taper. And it's very hard when I work with athletes, it's very hard to get them to taper properly because they feel guilty not doing the same volume of training that they were doing. They feel like, I'm going to lose all my fitness. And, I tell people it takes, you're not going to lose your fitness overnight. You're not going to lose your fitness in a few days, but you are going to refresh your body and give yourself a head start. You're going to give yourself more of an advantage by tapering and resting properly.
Yeah, I know it sort of sounds counterintuitive. You would think that, to increase endurance, you need to go more. So it does sound a little unexpected, but I guess that's what makes it work.
Right. Yeah. There's a whole science of peaking your training and then tapering your training in order to really perform at your best for a key event or some special long ride or race.
Right. And so the preparation also includes proper nutrition. So you go into a little bit about the kinds of food you eat, the kinds of food you avoid, and that sort of thing.
Oh, great. Yeah. I mean, I think basically on a week in, week out basis, I just try to eat a well-balanced, healthy diet. I don't go in for a lot of special supplements or taking pills to get my nutrients. I really think that the body is designed to absorb nutrients most efficiently from a food source. So I try to eat a nice, well-rounded diet. But as you do increase your training, you will have to increase your both your total caloric intake and also your carbohydrate consumption, because basically the body can really only use two fuel substrates for energy production. One is fats, and thankfully we all have a pretty much unlimited supply of fats in our body. The average person definitely has stores of over 100,000, 200,000 calories worth of fat. So you would think, oh, you're never going to run out of energy, you're never going to be hungry. But the problem is fat can only be burned in the flame of glucose, which means you still have to have some carbohydrates in your system in order to be able to access fat for energy production. So it is important to have enough carbohydrates, and especially the higher intensity that you're going to be performing, the more that your body relies on carbohydrate sources for energy production. Your body is very comfortable using fat when you're at rest or at lower intensity levels. But once you reach a certain critical point where you go above that metabolic set point where your body shifts from burning primarily fats for fuel to burning primarily carbohydrates, then you're going to start burning through carbohydrates much faster than you burn through fats. And unfortunately, while I mentioned you have over 100,000 calories of fat stored in your body, the body can only store about 1,500 calories at the most of carbohydrates, and then probably add another 250 or so calories for blood glucose that's always circulating, as long as you provide more carbohydrates in your bloodstream. So we really have a rather limited amount of carbohydrate storage, and that's why it is so important to keep eating and drinking during long events in order to maintain a steady supply of carbohydrates.
I want to get back to the actual racing itself, because often in races, you find yourself facing an unexpected situation. How do you handle that? And could you give me an example or two of how you overcame what could have been setbacks that could have destroyed your whole entire race?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, of course, one thing that you always want to be careful of is obviously you don't want to crash and, injure yourself or wreck your bike so that it is no longer functioning. But everybody from time to time will have, some sort of little fender bender on the bike or some sort of little crash or some sort of little incident. But the one thing is to kind of learn to handle yourself while you're riding with others, so that if you do make contact with another rider, it doesn't have to result in a crash or an accident. In fact, that's one of the things that we work on with newer racers is we make them go through certain bike handling skills training so that they know what to do if their front wheel touches the wheel of another biker, or if they accidentally bump into another rider. In one race in particular, it was early in the race, it was the Grant's Tomb Criterium, which is a race. A criterium race is a race where you cover a very short course, like you go round and around and around the town square, or a course that's usually less than between 1 kilometer and 2 miles long, and you do many repeated loops of that course. So as the name implies, Grant's Tomb Criterium is sort of like the joke, who's buried in Grant's tomb? It's held at Grant's tomb. And we ride round and around and around and around the square that Grant's tomb is located on. And I had done fairly well in that race from time to time. But in this particular race, as I was rounding a corner, I bumped into one of the other riders who was really, really good criterium rider. But she was experienced, I was experienced, and we both kind of laughed it off, and there's no harm, no foul, and continued the race. Where if I had let that upset me and throw me, I would not have been ready for what came up about the next lap, which was a woman attacked, and I didn't recognize her. It turned out she was a top collegiate racer who was on a pro team and was participating in the Grant's Tomb Criterium that year. But she attacked out of the field, and I just instinctively jumped on her wheel and chased after her, and just about busted a lung working my way up to her. And by the time I caught up to her, I was totally out of breath and completely gassed, and spent about a half a lap just trying to stay with her. And then we started working together, and we were working together so well that we started increasing the distance between us and the rest of the field. And with about 5 laps to go, I realized I don't think the field is going to be able to make up the distance. Now we were about ready to lap the field at that point. And I thought, there's no way the field is going to catch us. And at this point, they had all lost interest in wasting energy chasing the first 2 riders, because that meant someone was really going to have to do a lot of work. And the rest of the riders, their mindset is, well, I'm just going to sit back and wait for the sprint. So I stayed with this woman on the last lap, and I thought, oh, this is great. I could get second place in this race. And as we were coming around the final turn and heading toward the finish line, I thought, she's not going that fast. So I just stood up and sprinted and roared past her and won the race, much to my surprise. If I had let that first little incident throw me or, put me in some kind of a negative mind state, I know I wouldn't have had the calmness. I think I would have been afraid to try to respond to her attack. But I just kept going.
That is so fascinating to hear. We have to take a short break now. We are speaking with Anne-Marie Miller all about performance as a top-level athlete, and we'll be right back.
When is a car not a car?
When it shows up in your dreams. Cars are one of the most common dream symbols. If you don't know why you're dreaming about cars or any image, it can leave you confused or scared.
But that dream could be a solution to a pressing problem.
Or an insight into a solution that's been bugging you for years.
Go to my website and sign up for a complimentary discovery session, and I'll help you understand why a dream is a terrible thing to waste. Go to thedreamcoach.net for more information.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're talking about performance racing with Anne-Marie Miller. Well, Anne, for those listening on the podcast who can't see you, I have to say that you're not a little kid, and yet you race against collegians and win. How do you do that?
Well, I think the main thing is just to be in the moment, to be as well prepared as you can be. I try to build my fitness up to the most I can. And you really have to, especially in a sport like bike racing, a lot of times the result is more dependent on when you play your card and knowing your strengths so that you play your card at the right time. And I think that I'm good at, you have to stay in the moment. I think many people get way ahead of themselves and write a big script about what they're going to do in a race situation, but you really have to be so totally in the moment that you really sense what the rest of the group is doing as a big organism or something. And you feel what's going on in the group. There have been many times when I've won races in rather uncanny situations where I just sense that moment where everybody else was sitting up and looking at each other and saying to themselves, I don't want to go to the front and work. Let her go to the front. No, not me. I'm not going to the front. Let that person go to the front. And when I see that kind of hesitation, and I know people are trying to size each other up, a little voice often comes on in me and just says, gotta go. And I listen. And when I listen to that voice, if I'm in good shape and I can follow through on it, it gives you just enough of an advantage that other people then are kind of left startled, and it will take them another couple of seconds to react. And by the time they've reacted, you've been able to establish an advantage over the rest of the group. So I think much of, being successful, and the same way tennis players or anybody else, you have to know when to hit the drop shot to catch your opponent off guard, or you have to know when to hit the lob that'll take them kind of out of position so that you can set yourself up for, a real smash hit. And I think that part of it is just trusting yourself in the moment to know, and also to look at the course, if you know anything about the course that you're racing on, to kind of pick spots where you feel like you would have the best chance to establish a breakaway, or where you would have the best chance to launch your sprint.
So many times we talk about being in the zone, having that singular focus and mindset, which is actually where we're operating on a different brainwave level than we normally do. So would you say that you're in the zone when you're racing?
When I've had those when I have listened to the little voice and I don't censor it, yes, I'm definitely in the zone. I just go, it's like a visceral reaction. when I try to intellectualize about stuff, and that's when it always invariably will get me in trouble. If I look over at someone and I don't know them or something, and I kind of think, well, don't worry, we don't need to chase that person. We'll catch her on the hill. Those are the times when I realized that was a real mistake. You should have just gone with your instinct, follow that person when they attack. So many times so I find that trying not to be intellectual about it or to overthink, but just really be in the moment, exactly, be in the flow. If nothing else, as long as you try, you may be surprised at the result. You may be happily surprised at the result. And if you don't try, then you never give yourself a chance to see what you could do.
So in other words, trust your gut.
Exactly.
Yes. So you're talking about this whole mindset that you have for racing. Do you find that this helps you deal with obstacles in other areas of your life?
Yes, I think so. I think learning to be calm and to approach situations with a sense of looking at the big picture and figuring out what to do, it's very helpful. And I think also being able to sort of read the race, read the room, and see what's going on so that you know how to act or when to make your play. I think in that respect, it certainly does. And I think also just that aspect of once in a while you get in a situation, I haven't spoken much about this yet, where yes, you're in a long race or you're especially climbing a long hill and it doesn't get any easier. Let's put it that way. And you just kind of have to keep saying to yourself, one pedal stroke at a time, because if you can just keep going that one more pedal stroke, you might be able to hang on and persevere and succeed where others might give up to some extent and slow down or not keep up that kind of effort. So sometimes it's just a matter of, okay, let me try this one more pedal stroke. If I can do one more pedal stroke, maybe I can do another one.
How many races do you race each year?
Well, it depends. In the past couple of years, unfortunately, there haven't been many races due to the pandemic. But before that, I was racing probably anywhere from 40 to 50, 60 races, in a really busy year. Usually you have
quite a lot.
Yeah. In many cases, you have opportunities to race at least once a weekend or sometimes on Saturday and Sunday. And I've also entered a lot of stage races, which are multi-day events that consist of different events each day. And I love stage racing because then you get to do different courses and different types of racing all in the same event. So I think stage racing is probably my favorite type of event to participate in.
And do you race only against women or do you race against men also?
Well, in USA Cycling and Masters Cycling, you only compete against other women. So if in that respect, for most racing, we only compete against women. But there are other events like Grand Fondos where even though men and women may be placed separately, everybody starts together. And so you may find yourself in a mixed group of men and women. And they don't really place you against the men other than just perhaps in the overall results of the entire event. Each age group and each sex has, they're given separate categories.
In those kind of races, do you ever find yourself out racing the men?
Yes. And there was one race where the promoter combined a men's masters field, I think masters 55 plus with the advanced women's field, the women category 1, 2. And the men were very upset about this. They were like, well, the women are just going to slow us down. And somehow, as it turned out at that race, the women finished ahead of the men. I happened to win that one, but I was in the lead group of women, and somewhere along the way, we dropped the men. So they were complaining that they thought they were going to be stuck racing with women. And surprise, surprise, we happened to perform better than they did that day. That doesn't happen often, but it was kind of gratifying, especially because they had obviously seemed a little annoyed at the fact they were going to have to race with women.
Yeah, well, I don't find it too surprising, though. Are there times when, let's say, you get injured or you fall off the bike during a race that you feel like giving up? And if so, how do you get out of that mindset to continue?
Well, yeah, fortunately, most of the times, if I've had injury or had some kind of a minor crash, it's been minor, like, just pick myself up, make sure the bike's okay, get back on the bike and continue. But I have had some serious injuries. And in that case, and some of them really were pretty serious injuries. And I had to spend months recovering and even wondering, hey, will I be able to ride again? But I just look at it very philosophically from a, take it day by day. Your job, if you are injured or if you get sick or something happens that you have to, pull out of your sport or any activity for a while to recover from something. And it could even be some other physical ailment that has nothing to do with your sport. But if you have to take some time off to recover, just look at it as recovery and getting back your strength and your health is your first job. That's your first priority. So just look at it that way. Don't get ahead of yourself. Just take care of yourself right then and there. If that means more rest initially, if that means, a certain recovery period or some kind of treatment, be it, treatment from a doctor, surgery, whatever, give yourself that time. And then if you are injured badly enough that, you do have to recover, get yourself a really good team. Choose your doctors even carefully. If you have a choice, make sure that they're going to be on the same page as you and they understand, especially if you want to get back to your activities, that this is important to you. And it's not just enough that a bone heals, or it's not just enough that, you recover from a sprain or something, but that they understand you want to get back and you want to make sure you're at the top of your game as a result of it. And even things like physical therapists, when I have had injuries that were really serious, the physical therapy team that I had was incredible. And even noticed that I was, in one incident, I was making progress ahead of what the doctor had expected. And the physical therapist asked me, do you mind if I approach your doctor? Because he goes, you're already exceeding his predictions for what you can do, what your capabilities are, what your range of motion is. Do you mind if I approach him to see if I can give you some more advanced exercises? And I was like, hey, certainly, that's great. And the doctor was actually glad to hear this from the physical therapist. So they weren't afraid to try to cooperate as a team and make sure that I was able to get back on my feet and be better than ever. But it was several months of recovery, several months of physical therapy, and then getting back to riding. And it was a long process, but then of course, once you do get back to riding, you think, oh, am I going to be able to ride the way I did before? Am I going to have any doubts? But you get back to it and you just, like I say, focus on the moment, focus on what you're doing right then, do everything you can to perform your best and be safe and avoid being reckless or anything. And works out pretty well.
Yeah, it's just like getting back on a bicycle, right?
It is just like,
How long do you see yourself continuing to race competitively?
That's a good question. I think I will continue to race and ride as long as I'm enjoying it and as long as I can. One of the things that really inspired me so much was when I went to Masters Worlds in Albi, France in 2017, and I won the road race that year and got the bronze medal in the time trial. And they were having the presentation of the medals for the road race on the final day of the event. And they also wanted to introduce a special guest at this program, which was a man named Robert Marchand, who was 106 years old. And he had just set the world age group record for the 105-year-old age group for the 1 hour record, which 1 hour record in cycling is riding on a track, a velodrome, as far as you can in 1 hour. Now, God bless him, this Robert Marchand was a French man. And so he won. He actually had been the 100-year-old record holder for the hour. And then he turned 105 and he said, can I compete for the 105-year-old title? And the International Cycling Union simply said, we've never had anybody 105 to compete before. And God bless him, he rode around the velodrome. His hour record time for the 105-year-old category was 0.8 miles. By contrast, the elite professional cyclists world hour record is about 35 miles in 1 hour. But the elite professional is not 106 years old. But I had the honor of meeting this man, and he came backstage where we were all waiting to receive our medals, and he was going around shaking people's hand and saying hello. And then I saw him after the event. He was sitting outside with someone who was kind of taking care of him, and I asked him for a picture. And to me, that was so inspiring to see someone who was 106 and still riding. Now, hey, if I get that far, I would be thrilled. But I'm going to continue riding and racing and training and sharing fitness with other people as long as I can.
Wonderful. Anne-Marie, how can people find out more about you and your work?
Well, I have my own coaching business called Epic Training and Fitness, and my website is www.epictrainingandfitness.com. I am a USA Cycling Level 2 licensed coach, so if you go on the USA Cycling website, you can look up the directory of coaches, and I am listed there. And if you happen to be in New York City and you want to say hello, reach out through my website, and I'd be happy to say hello or meet anybody, go for a ride.
Wonderful. Well, Anne-Marie, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today.
Thank you. And I would also say, keep believing in your dreams, and you never know where a dream is going to come from. I always say cycling found me almost more than I found cycling. And be open, find something that you enjoy and let it take you to dreams you never even thought of.
Perfect way to end this. We've been speaking about success with award-winning racer and cycling coach Anne-Marie Miller. Hope you've enjoyed today's program. If so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio.